Welcome to the Stepmom Side with Alicia, the podcast for stepmoms ready to create the life they want and one they actually have a say in. Here we talk all things stepmom life and just a little bit more. Leave the superficial conversations at the door and get ready for perspective shifts and actionable advice to help you on your way to creating the life you want, one step at a time. Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Stepmom Side podcast. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that this was like the episode that I was kind of trying to avoid because I could talk about being a stepmom like all day long, but you want me to talk about myself. Okay, where do I start? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a little brief background of me and then like current life, and we'll go from there. So I grew up in small town Iowa. I moved to Florida for work, and then I moved to Texas for work. And I actually met my husband at work. Like I was living in Texas and he was living in Michigan. And then I moved to Michigan before we got married, but I moved into their house. And I asked like a couple questions, or I asked on Instagram, like, what do you want to know about my story? Because I'm like, I could give you like a dissertation on everything, but what do you actually want to know? And so I got like, how old were your stepkids when I met them? So my stepson was 8 and my stepdaughter was 11 when I met them. And then they were 11 and 14 by the time that we got married. And so I'm just going to kind of go into like the questions that I got rather than being like, here's everything. I could rather have you know like what you want to know as opposed to like whatever it is that I think that you want to know. So what did my family think about me marrying somebody with kids? Honestly, I don't even know. I never asked. I've always kind of been independent and confident on my own. And I was never like, hey, what do you guys think? And they very well could have had ideas or judgment or whatever. And I'm pretty sure they did. But no one ever actually said anything to me. So I don't know what they thought. Everyone likes him though. So, I mean, my husband is pretty likable, but everyone really likes him. So there's really no issue there. How was it with the kids' mom at first? To be honest with you, she's always been kind to me. I've never had an issue with her, but I struggled. I was really jealous that she had all of this time with my husband, and I felt like my relationship would never marry or like never mean enough or never be special enough, if you will. I was insecure about it. My husband's 16 years older, so is she. And, you know, I felt like maybe people didn't take our relationship serious because I was so much younger. I was insecure because everyone else had so much more life experience than me. And I didn't have kids of my own. And so there was that part of like, well, you're not really a mom because you don't have kids of your own. So you can't really know how to be a mom. But I felt like sometimes my ideas or like my parenting was judged. And now looking back, like rightfully so, but it was awkward too. Like, how do you navigate having to communicate with somebody's ex as much as you do, or like having somebody's ex like involved in your life as much as you do? And yeah, I would say all of the struggles that I had in the beginning, like looking back, obviously hindsight's always 20/20, but it was definitely a lot of it was self-inflicted. So what did I struggle with the most in the beginning? Jealousy, insecurity, it being awkward. I struggled with really the lack of control. Like I said, I've always been pretty independent, pretty confident, like in my own right. But then to become a stepmom and it's like, oh, you thought you had it all figured out. Hey, by the way, let me give you a lesson in no, you don't. And so that was really a struggle with me because I traveled quite a bit with a girlfriend before we got married. And I remember saying to my husband, like, that's something that I still want to do. Like, I still want to be able to travel. And if I'm not going to be able to do that, like, that's kind of going to be an issue. And he was like, go ahead, travel. I may or may not be able to go with you, depending on my schedule, depending on the kids' schedule, whatever. And sometimes I can go and sometimes I can't. But it was just more of like making sure that I had that freedom to like do whatever I want. And yeah, the lack of control as far as like schedules went, because I felt like I never knew who was coming, who was going, how long they were staying. I'd never been in this situation before, so it was all new to me. And whenever you learn something new, obviously it's super challenging. But yeah, I really struggled with that the most. And then trying to figure out like where I fit in, because I wasn't a mom, but it was like kind of in a mom position or like a parental position, and trying to navigate like, well, what do I do, or what don't I do, or what can I do, or what can't I do? Like, this is so weird. So what do the kids call me, and have they ever called you mom? So they call me by my name, Alicia. They've never called me mom. It's varied. Like I've been my dad, or I've heard them say like my dad's girlfriend, my dad's wife, Alicia, that's my stepmom. And it was really weird, like the very first time that they called me a stepmom, because when my husband and I got together, I was 26. And so I'm like, what? Stepmom? Like, that's weird, right? And then there's all of like the negative connotations that come with being a stepmom. And I was like, oh man. And I was just telling another stepmom last night on my group coaching for the stepmom side community, that I felt like an outsider a lot, like in my early years, like a lot. And then when I became a full-time stepmom, there were times that are like, I wish that I could go back to being that outsider and not like the center of like everything and like keeping everything intact. But yeah, the kids just call me my name. I do have a nickname like with my stepson, but aside from that, like they just call me my name. Do the kids live with me primarily? Nope, they're adults now. They're out of the house. So my stepson is 19. My stepdaughter is now 22. So they are out of the house. My stepson's been out for a little over a year, and my stepdaughter has been out for about 4 years. And if you know my story a little bit, you know that I've been a sporadic part-time stepmom, like depends on my husband's schedule. And then we had our daughter, and so then I was a brand new mom. And then I became a full-time stepmom shortly after that. And that was a lot. Like looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, going from like a sporadic part-time stepmom to a new mom and then like a full-time stepmom like right after that was a lot, because whatever I did like with my daughter, like my stepson would be a part of. And then same thing, like whatever my stepson was doing, like I would just pack up my daughter and like take her with us. And it was a lot, like going through like postpartum stuff, and luckily like it went pretty smoothly for me. But I am very structured. Like I like a routine. I like, you know, having things planned out. So that's what I did. And yeah, looking back, I'm like, that was a little insane, but it worked. Next question I got was, did I or do I ever communicate with the kids as mom? Yes. So like I said, in my early years, I really, really struggled being a stepmom. Mostly my own things like jealousy, insecurity, like just the feeling of like awkwardness. It was my husband and her communicating at first, and she has remarried, but like before we did. And so it was basically my husband and her communicating at first. And then I was really frustrated because I never knew like what the schedule was or like what was happening, even though we had like, these are our scheduled dates. But I would always find out like last minute schedule changes, like whenever they happened. And that really stressed me out. Like I said, I like routine, I like planning, I like structure. And so then we did a group chat, and there were times on that group chat that I had it silenced. There were times on that group chat that I wanted to leave because it was too much, like communicating, again, the jealousy, communicating with my husband's ex-wife. But then I couldn't leave the group chat because then I would have no control, right? Like I would have absolutely no idea what was going on, which like really isn't true because my husband does communicate quite well. But we did a group chat, and then that worked really well. And then when my stepson moved in full time, it was primarily her and I that communicated. My husband was in on it sometimes, but I like stay at home. So I was the one that was mostly in the know about everything. So I would say for the last 4 years, it's mostly been her and I communicating. And we did it on the group chat. And then when my stepson moved out, like he's in the military now, so when he went off to basic training, she and I, or actually it was her that said, hey, do you want to just communicate like you and I? Because I feel like it's a little more personal that way. Absolutely. So now it's basically, I would say 99.9999% of the time, exclusively her and I communicating. And I would say that is mostly like growth on my part. I don't think that she ever viewed me as competition or anything like that. But it was the jealousy and the insecurity on my own end that I was like, I cannot communicate with this woman. But then now I'm like, I would even say that we're friends, like we're very friendly. We've done joint graduation parties together. We all stayed at the same hotel for my stepson's basic training graduation. We had them over in our hotel room. Our co-parenting situation is really good. And the times that it wasn't was, I would say, from my perspective, because I was struggling with whatever it was that I was struggling with. And I just needed to learn that I don't have to be in control of everything. Like, I can barely control myself, let alone trying to communicate or trying to control everyone else. So did or do I ever communicate with their mom? Yes, I do that. I'm the primary communicator, which honestly, like, I never thought that I would be. Like, in the beginning, I never thought that I would be at the place that I am now because I struggled so much. What did their mom think of me being pregnant? She had already remarried and she had already had 2 kids. She had a set of twins. So her being pregnant, honestly, like, I was paranoid about telling her. I was paranoid about telling the kids. My husband was the one that told her, and she was great about it. She was like, oh my gosh, congratulations. That's amazing. And then we had my daughter in March of 2019, and then my stepdaughter graduated that year. So we had her graduation party in June of 2019, and we had a joint graduation party here at our house. And I remember my stepkids' mom being like, hey, if you ever want me to hold your daughter, I'm happy to hold her. And I was like, oh my gosh, no way. But then, like, my stepson just graduated last year, and my daughter was 3, or actually, yeah, she was 3. And so she was like, I'm going to chase you. So she would chase the kids' mom, or she would chase their stepdad around, or, it's just like an icebreaker, which is like crazy. I never thought that I would be at that point. But yeah, like I said, when I struggled, it was because of my own jealousy or like insecurities. But the kids' mom has always been kind to me. There was no jealousy or competition when it came to like being pregnant. How did the kids handle getting a little sister, or me giving them a little sister? They were great about it. My stepson was here full time at that point, and they are like super close, even though he's quite a ways away now. Like, we talk to him often. I send him pictures. They are super close. My stepson played football, so he's a big guy, and all of his friends are too. And so they're all tall and like built, and, they would roughhouse with her. They would chase her around, or, they would sit and play with her, like build little flowers, or, draw with her or color with her. So it's really, honestly, like, that's the most beautiful thing, like seeing these big, tough football players melt into like these little puddles, like just to play with her or spend time with her, or, throw her around or let her hang out with them. But I'm also mindful of like, hey, they are here to see your brother. They're here to hang out with him. We need to give them some space. It's not just like, oh, great, his friends are over, like, let me use them as a babysitter. Absolutely not. One time, though, I was out of town. My husband and I were out of town for the night. And I had said to my stepson, like, is it okay for you to keep her overnight? And he was like, yeah, can I have one of my friends come over and spend the night with me? I was, sure. And it was his best friend, and my daughter loves this friend. And so like the next morning I got a picture of them like hanging out, like having breakfast. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's just so cute, because she was so excited. It's like a sleepover. I'm like, yeah, it's going to be really fun. But yeah, I'm sure she stayed up way too late. I'm sure she ate whatever she wanted, and they were like cool with it. And I was cool with it too. Like I wasn't there, so whatever they did was whatever they did. But yeah, my stepson is absolutely crazy about her, which is great. My stepdaughter was moving out when she was born, so there wasn't that initial bonding like my stepson got to have. But it's been beautiful to see over the years how they've gotten closer, or how my daughter is like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for Easter, or I can't wait for Thanksgiving, or oh my gosh, if my stepdaughter's coming over, like, I can't wait to see my sister. I'm so excited to see her. And it's really, really sweet. And like when my stepdaughter's here, like they'll play together, or she'll show her different things on her phone, or they'll draw, or she's like really great at making faces. So they'll like make faces back and forth, or like she'll chase her around too. Like their relationships are different because of how things just played out. But they both are like, we've got a sister. They already had a set of brothers from their mom anyway. And so now they've got a little sister. It's just, I guess it's just like normal, just like the way of life. Next question. I know your daughter is still young, but how does she handle being away from her brother? Okay, this was really heartbreaking because when he went off to basic training, his car was still here. He didn't take it with him. And so she'd be like, where is he? Like, why is his car's here? Like, where is he? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to try not to cry, like, explaining this. But I was like, he's at basic training, like, he's not here. And then we sold his car, or he sold his car rather, to one of his friends. And his friend came to get it. So now the car is gone. And in the morning or at night, like, she would go and like look out our kitchen window to see if his car was here, and it wasn't. And she'd be like, where is he? When is he coming back? And I'm like, I'm struggling with it too, because I missed him and it was really hard because we were super close. And then trying to explain to a 3-year-old that he's not coming back, but we're going to see him in September. We're going to see him in December. You know, we're going to see him at these different times is really hard. And it's just, you know, like, we would look at pictures of him. Like, we've got a bunch of different pictures up around the house, or, you know, we'd FaceTime him. At that time, we could only FaceTime him like on Sundays. And so that is really difficult. But now, you know, it's been a little over a year and everyone is kind of settled into where they are. We still talk about the kids and we still have pictures up and we still see them, but it's gotten better because it's like our normal now, right? So even though she has siblings, it's almost like she's an only child, and it's worked out. Like, she's like, okay, they're adults, they've grown up, you know, because I've explained it to her, like, they're adults, they've grown up, they've moved out of the house. And she's like, okay, well, when I turn 4, I'm going to be the adult. And she's already 4 now. And I'm like, okay, you're going to be the adult. But when I'm the adult, when I grow up big like them, I'm going to move out too. I'm like, great, like, good for you. Like, I hope that you do. Where are you going to go? And she's like, I'm going to go really far away. Maybe you can visit me sometime. I'm like, okay, maybe sometime I'll visit you. But it's just having that conversation and trying not to be hard or weird about it. And here, like, this is just the facts of life. Another question I got, like, to totally switch subjects, is, did we have phone calls in the parenting agreement or the court order? We didn't. The custody schedule, court order, parenting agreement, whatever you would like to call it, depending on where you are, was pretty flexible. I will say that the kids' mom was amazing at being flexible, especially like with my husband's work schedule. And there wasn't ever, I don't feel like, any like tit for tat, like, oh, if you do this, I'm going to do that kind of thing. But we did not have phone calls in the parenting agreement or court order because the kids were a little bit older, 8 and 11. So, and we don't live that far away, or we didn't at the time live that far away from them. So yeah, we didn't have that put in there. Another question I got was, if you could go back and do this all over again, would you? Yes, my answer is yes. I could go without like all of the like struggles that I had, like the jealousy, the insecurity, the what in the hell is actually going on? Like, how do I figure out like where I fit in and what happens? But I would say I don't even know that I would necessarily not do that, because then I wouldn't appreciate what I've got now. Like, yes, that part was like really tumultuous and I really struggled. I Googled quite a bit like how to get divorced in my very first year of marriage, because I was like, I didn't sign up for this. Like, I didn't know that it was going to be this hard. I didn't know that I wasn't going to be accepted just because I've got stepmom by my name. But what I came to realize after a lot of therapy, and maybe like the millionth time my husband said, Alicia, it's not you. It's not you. It's not you. Don't take it personally. It's not you. But I didn't know like how to not take things personally. And so I was like the queen of taking everything personally. Anything that could have possibly have been a slight, I 100% took as a slight. Anything that possibly could have been like maybe even like an attack on me, like it was a full-on attack. Yeah, I took everything personally, and I didn't know how to not do that until I realized, like actually really realized, oh, it's not me. It's this role that I'm in. So here's what I would say to you. If you're in this place as a stepmom where you feel like everyone is against you or everyone is attacking you or nothing's ever going to get better or it's just going to be this crazy chaos for however long, I just want you to know that whoever you feel that is against you or is actively working against you, they very well could be 100%. But I want you to know that it's not you, because you and I could switch roles and that person is still going to be doing whatever it is that they're doing to you, to me. That's it. Like, full stop. So it's not you. Like, don't take it personally. It's not you. Which is easy to say now, like on the other side, like, don't take it personally. And so I think if you can get it through like your thought process, like I had to get it through my thick skull, like, okay, this is not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me. That will set you up for success a little bit faster than I did. Like, it took me years and years and years. So yeah, I would do this all over again. And I would be able, I'm like, but I don't want that middle part. But I would be able to navigate the middle part easier because I've been through it. And so I can now look back objectively at myself rather than being like, this person's doing this wrong, that person's doing that wrong, that person's doing that wrong. And be like, okay, let's take that finger and point it back to ourselves and be like, okay, Alicia, what is your part in this? What are you doing? Because I didn't handle a lot of things well. I didn't have the emotional intelligence to handle it well. It might be not so great to say that I handled a lot of things like a toddler would. Like, if I didn't get my way or if things weren't going my way, I acted out. I was a raging bitch sometimes. Like, I'm amazed that my husband stayed married too. Things are completely different now. My attitude is completely different. And I think that you don't know what you don't know, and you can't know them without going through this. So if you're struggling, just know that the only thing you can control is you, which is so maddening when people would tell me that. I'm like, I get it, but if I could just control that person doing that, because I was like the master at like trying to control the outcomes or trying to control the people. Well, like I said at the beginning, like I can barely control myself, let alone like trying to control other people. Like, that's just not going to happen. And then there's all of these other factors at play, like loyalty binds, parental alienation. Everyone's got, differing opinions on how kids should be raised or what you should or shouldn't do or how you should or shouldn't show up. And it's like, okay, the hell with what everyone else thinks. I'm going to do what feels good for me, as long as it's not, like barring anything like abusive or anything like that. Like, as long as it's within reason, like I'm going to do what feels good for me. And with the stepmoms that I coach, I hear so much, well, I feel like I have to, make sure that my stepkids do this, like go to bed at a certain time, brush their teeth at a certain time, or make sure that they're actually brushing their teeth. Like the house has to be like perfectly done, because if not, everything's getting reported back to their mom. And here's what I would say to that. Oh my God, I get it. Oh my gosh, I see you. Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I felt the exact same way. And I lived that for years. And you can absolutely continue to live like that. Or you can be like, you know what? She probably doesn't brush their teeth every night either. She might not even floss their teeth every night either. Her house is probably a mess at some point. I'm sure that the kids do not go to bed every single night right when they're supposed to. She struggles just as much as you do. It's okay for you to struggle. It's okay for you to miss a few things. Give yourself a little bit of grace, something I did not do in the beginning at all. At all, at all. So yeah, you're human. It's okay for you to make mistakes. It's okay for you to be vulnerable with the kids. Scary, because your mind is racing a million miles a minute. Like, what are they going to say? What are they going to think? What are they going to report back? I don't know. But a lot of the stories that we make up in our head aren't exactly true or won't necessarily come to fruition. A lot of the ones that I made up, I was a great story maker upper, but a lot of the ones that I made up, or a lot of the ones that I formed and believed in my own head, like never came to happen. And my husband would be like, see, you worried yourself for no reason. Like, that didn't even happen. And it used to make me so mad. And then finally I was like, okay, I'm going to stop making stories and I'm going to see what happens. And things went a lot more smoothly. And I was not super keen on telling him, hey, you were right. I should have listened to you, because I couldn't see the forest through the trees. I couldn't take any advice that he had. I was like, I know better than he does. Like, I'm so much better than him at this, but I wasn't. So if you're going through like a hard part, another thing that I want to tell you is your partner does not need to know every single thing that you think. Just listen to my advice. Like, learn from my mistakes. There we go. Learn from my mistakes. Because I would be like, okay, and this happened, 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 and they did this, and they did that, and I felt this, and did it, and whatever. That is not helpful. You're emotionally invested in the situation, but your partner's even more emotionally invested because these are their kids. Something that I wish that I would have done so much sooner. So this is my like last part, and my advice to you is get help early and often, because oh my gosh, I would have been set up for so much more success if I would have actually gotten help like outside of my relationship and known, okay, all of these things are completely normal. All of my feelings, all of my emotions, all of the things that I'm experiencing, these are all completely normal. But I need to get some assistance, help, really, support, whatever it is that you want to call it, on how to handle all of this. Because, I always say, when you're riding your bike, because right now we're teaching my daughter how to ride her bike, and she just got it yesterday, which is really exciting. But she didn't just go out and pick up a bike and try to learn it on her own. Like, she had us, helping her navigate that. Or if you're trying to learn something new, even if you're at work and you're trying to learn something new, they don't just say, okay, here you go, good luck. They've got somebody training you. Or you've got meetings that are like, hey, like performance evaluations, like here's how this is going, like, here's what we could tweak, whatever. So my advice is get support early and often. And I wish that I would have done that way earlier than I did, and just admitted that, damn, I'm struggling. Like, I really need help. I didn't admit any of that either. A lot of pride, a lot of ego stood in my way of, I don't need help. I've got this figured out. I'm so good at this. I'm so good at running my life. Like, let me run yours. No, it's a completely different dynamic. And which is like, now that I feel like I've, for the most part, not always, but like for the most part, I have things relatively under control. Like, I'm, for the most part, pretty unflappable. I don't really raise my eyebrows a whole lot. I'm like, meh, people are going to people. Like, they're just going to do what people are going to do. Like I said, like, now that I feel like I've kind of gotten to the other side of it, that's why I started the stepmom side community, just a place for stepmoms to connect and be like, damn, you know what? I am struggling. And it's off social media. So that way you don't have to be concerned about your partner's ex seeing it, or your in-laws, or your family, or your friends, or God forbid your stepkids saying like, hey, I'm really struggling with this, and this is what I said, or this is what I did. Because at the worst time, or at the darkest hour of being a stepmom, you don't act in your best self. Like, you're not saying the nicest things. You're not doing the nicest things. And there are things that I've said and done that I wish I could go back and unsay or undo, but I can't. And if I had a place where I could, go and get support and go and get advice and, meet with a stepmom coach weekly, because I've got weekly office hours and I do group coaching as well. But if I just had a place where I could go and be like, oh my gosh, my world is on fire. Here's what's happening. Is this normal? Please help me, someone. Like, what is happening? I think that my journey would have been a little bit different. If I would have been able to like listen and take somebody else's advice, probably. But it would have just been completely different. So again, if you're in the throes of it, I get it. I see you. This gig is hard. It feels like it's like completely stacked against you. And in some degree it is. So get support early and often. If you're looking for a community, I've got one. I'll link it in the show notes. I post about it on social media. Not as often as I should, probably, but I would love to have you on the inside. And now that I'm finish like this first episode of like, okay, what do you want to know about me? I feel a little bit better because I was stressing about it. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to avoid recording this podcast because I have no idea what to say. What do they want to know? Like, what do I say? What do I share? So yeah, as time goes on, and I can dive into like different parts of my stepmom journey, but as far as like an overview, this was kind of how it is. And, now we've been married 8 years and things are pretty good. Like everything's come full circle. Everyone, operates for the most part on the same page. We have hiccups every once in a while, but it's just getting to that point where like, okay, I didn't sign up for all of this, but I did sign up to be with this person, married or dating or whatever the case may be. And while I don't necessarily agree with everything that's going on, these are the parameters of my situation. And I've got to accept that this is my situation. Acceptance doesn't necessarily mean that I'm okay with it and I think it's great and I approve of all of this. Acceptance is, okay, this is my situation. One last thing I'll tell you is I remember being in a heated discussion, fight with my husband, and him saying to me, Alicia, let me ask you a question. Have you accepted your role as a stepmom? And immediately I was like, yeah, duh, why? And he knew, like, because he knows me well, to know that, like, I did not actually process that question. And so he said, okay, I'm going to ask you again. Have you actually accepted your role as a stepmom? And then I paused, because that's where the magic happens, right? Like if you practice the pause. And I was like, you know what? Actually, I haven't. And then like that kind of sunk in. I was like, dang. But I didn't go into it like with him. But then on my own, I was like, okay, I have not accepted, that these kids aren't mine. Like I want them to be mine. They're not. I've not accepted that I'm just the stepmom. I'm not their mom. I have not accepted that I don't really have control over all of the things that I want control over. I haven't really accepted, a lot of things. Like I need to work on this. So yeah, just be mindful if somebody says, hey, like accept this or accept that. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're like, they want you to be like, yay, this is great. I accept everything. It's just that you're like, okay, I'm accepting that this is my situation for right now. And on that, I'm going to love you and leave you, and I will see you, or you will hear me on the next episode of the Stepmom Side podcast. Thanks for listening in. Thank you for taking time to listen to this week's episode. If anything resonated or was helpful, please share it on social media and tag me. I'm at Alicia Krasko on Instagram, and if you could leave a 5-star rating and review, I would greatly appreciate it. When you find yourself struggling in your stepmom journey and you want a little bit more support, or a lot more support, without the hefty price tag of coaching, you might want to check out the Stepmom Side community. It's a private off-social media community for stepmoms, and you get to connect with me and other stepmoms from around the world. I hold weekly office hours and have monthly group coaching. It's kind of like having a personal coach in your back pocket, again, without that hefty price tag. To find out more and to join, head to aliciakrasko.com/community. Chat to you next week.